Okay, I believe we are recording. So hello everybody, welcome back to a very long overdue episode of the Overdramatic Book Fanatics, where me and Abby chat about everything to do with books. I've also got a very funny Ernie joining me, and we are so excited to be joined by our wonderful guest. We were brave and we reached out to the incredible Shauna Lawless, who has joined us this evening. Hello Shauna, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's always lovely to have people wanting to talk about my books and my series, so thank you.
You are more than welcome. I do apologise. There will be a little dog face joining us at multiple points during this conversation. We're all experiencing the heat wave in the UK at the moment, so we've all had to set up in various rooms to keep cool, and so I've had to subject myself to sitting on the floor with Ernie. But here we go. We are here to talk about your incredible Gael Song series, which is now, I mean, you're in now the second era of the Gael Song series. Abby and I did speak a little bit about this. We were sort of saying that to keep this very watcher friendly, we will try and keep this spoiler free sort of the majority of the way through the chat. But we do feel that if there are any questions or any moments where we feel like we might go into some spoilers at some point, we could just give a little spoiler warning if we feel that that's appropriate. But generally, we'll just keep this spoiler free, and we're so excited to chat to you. But firstly, I just wanted to say congratulations on the series and on the success, and of course on having Era 2 being published, because not only have you got a first trilogy, but now a second. So congratulations. How does it feel?
Do you know, it's fantastic, really. I say this to other people. I kind of went into publishing quite naively. Like, I didn't, like, there's so many statistics now about like how many people don't get to book 2 or to book 3, and I feel very lucky to have got 2 trilogy deals, as well as a novella deal as well. You know, I don't take that for granted. You know, and Head of Zeus, my publisher, have been very supportive. They're really enjoying the series, and they're putting a lot into it. So I kind of feel like I'm living the dream a wee bit. So very lucky, really. Very happy.
Oh, but honestly,
that's so nice.
Yeah, we're so happy for you. And honestly, I think Abby and I would both be in agreement that this couldn't have happened to a better author, because you're so wonderful. Your series is incredible. Abby and I can't stop gushing about it.
Thank you so much.
And Abby is probably like even more starstruck at the moment, because I believe, Abby, actually you got a chance to see Shauna last year.
Yes, I was at Butser, so I got to see you speak at Butser, and your talk was the best one that day, actually. So
thank you.
It was so interesting. You did so well with it.
That was such a good festival. The room was so smoky. Like, did your hair really smell of smoke for the whole rest of the day?
Yeah, it really did. But it was so like atmospheric, and like you talking about like Irish mythology and history in like such a smoky room. It really worked for the topic. It was fantastic, and yeah, all of that stuff was so interesting. So I very much enjoyed that. So thank you for that, belatedly.
Oh no, well that's wonderful that you came. Book festivals and book fairs, like I always say to people, like if you can go to them, do go to them, because you never know quite what you're going to hear or what talks are on, or like what different perspectives you're going to get. And I sort of think a live experience like that, especially at like a setting like that where it's all authentic, kind of ancient style buildings. I mean, I don't know, like where else can you get that? Like really very few places.
Incredible, just wandering around and like thinking about like this series and thinking about Elodie Harper's Wolf Den trilogy as well, because she was there too. Like thinking about series like that in that kind of setting is just incredible. And I definitely, when I was reading, because when I came to that, I hadn't read Daughter of the Otherworld yet, and then when I was reading Daughter of the Otherworld, I was like really imagining like that. It just leveled the whole experience up in my imagination. It was so cool. It was probably be a good time actually to kind of give an overview of what this series is about. Would you like to pitch it, Shauna?
I'm so bad at this, but I'm trying to get better. So the Gael Song series is a historical fantasy series. So it is set in Ireland between the 10th and 12th centuries, over the 2 eras. And so we get the real historical events at the time, lots of historical characters. It's a time in Ireland where there's lots of wars going on. But I have put mythological characters on top of these wars. So there's descendants of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and there are Fomorians who are kind of having their own secret war on top of these historical events, and at times are manipulating historical events to their own ends. So I would say if you like things like Outlander, if you like kind of the fusion of fantasy and history, you would probably like the Gael Song series.
I think that
Agreed.
in particular is a perfect way to say it, because Abby and I are often spoken about. So, I mean, this is one of our favourite series of all time, and I think it's that hybrid of it being historical and fantasy that just makes it so incredible, but also so great for so many different types of readers.
Yeah.
I think fantasy can sometimes get people sort of say, "Oh, I don't read fantasy," but this I feel like opens up so many doors for so many new types of readers as well, who may not have experienced or may not have thought that they wanted to experience reading a fantasy book.
Yes, I think so. And I think like historical fantasy is really such a niche. And it is getting more and more popular. Like there's definitely like John Gwynn's new book, which I am actually reading at the minute. It's historical fantasy. Catherine Arden has a book that's just come out, and it's historical fantasy. And I'm kind of feel like I'm seeing more and more of it, because I don't know who said this. It might have been George R.R. Martin, and he was like, when Lord of the Rings movies came out, everyone was like, I want a new Lord of the Rings. I want elves, and I want dragons, and orcs and all these things. But George R.R. Martin was like, maybe that wasn't what people liked so much about Lord of the Rings. Maybe it was other things, like the kind of the fellowship aspect, or kind of the political side of it and other things. And I think then when he wrote Game of Thrones, it was such a twist on Lord of the Rings. It's fantasy, but it actually has more historical like aspects to it, I guess. And so that's why I do think historical fantasy is having a little bit of a boom at the minute, because with the success of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, some people, yes, love the dragons and they love all the magic and all that sort of stuff. But I think some people do like the pseudo history elements of it, like houses fighting each other, and who's going to be king or who's going to be queen. And of course, George R.R. Martin leans very heavily into history. For inspiration, shall we say, especially like in English and Celtic history. So I think all of that's kind of in the ethos right now, and kind of people are maybe a little bit more willing to give historical fantasy a go than they used to be.
Yes.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because I always credit A Song of Ice and Fire as being the reason I read historical fiction in the first place. Even though it is a big epic fantasy, it got me into like Wars of the Roses and the Tudors, and then from there I've just gone in all sorts of directions. So that's so cool. Yeah,
no, because I would be a big fan of historical fiction, and so whenever Game of Thrones, well, actually, I read the first few books before the TV series came out, and I could see like, oh, he's using like the War of the Roses here, or he's using like some older historical elements, and I love that. I love taking inspiration like that and then kind of twisting it, or using several different types of countries' history and fusing it all together. It's very creative, and I always enjoy reading that and then finding out about the real history that's been used as inspiration.
Actually, you saying that's something that Abby and I really appreciate about your books as well, because obviously so much of them is based on real Irish history, which regrettably, Abby and I know very little of. I mean, I think even in an interview before, Shauna, you mentioned that generally Irish history just isn't really taught. It's just, we know very little of it, here in England, but it's just not taught. It's not included on our education at all. And it's such a shame, because it's so rich with history. But something we loved about your books was at the end that you always did have a little section that sort of outlined where you drew the true history from, and then where you made little changes here and there to make it work in the story. And it just, we adore that bit, because it gave us sort of a reference point to look to when you wanted to go and read on as well.
Yes. Do you know, I get so many messages from people who have read the first book and then have Googled. And then they're like, no, please tell me that you like didn't do this exactly. And I'm like, well, you have to read to find out. But yeah, Irish history is, I mean, it's full of tragedy, and it's just full of everything. It's fantastic. Like, it's you'll experience the whole range of emotions if you kind of delve into Irish history, because it's so interesting. But it isn't really taught so much. I mean, in Ireland, obviously, like, we get some Irish history in school. A lot of it focuses more on modern Irish history. So when I was in school, you know, we would have learned about the famine, kind of Irish independence and things like that. To go back to this era is kind of harder because there's not so much information on it. And I felt when I was taught about this era in school, it was very reductive and kind of actually wrong. And so whenever I read like an actual history book about it, I found that so intriguing. I was like, why was I taught a kind of almost like a wrong version of this? And then that kind of made me dig deeper into this era. But it should be taught more. I really think history is so interesting. You know, it should be a bigger part of our syllabuses, I think, at school.
I agree. I'm really interested to know then, Shauna, did the idea for the book series come first and then the research, or did the kind of idea of the series come from you kind of diving into the history because you were interested in it?
Oh, do you know, it's such like a fusion of the two, because I'd read all this history, so, and I knew so much about mythology, and it was all in my head. So it's just all rattling around in there. And then whenever, I mean, I always used to write when I was younger, like as a teenager and a child. And then once I hit my 20s, I got married and had kids and a full-time job, and the writing fell away a little bit. And then by the time I was 30, it was actually like my 30th birthday party. It was sort of my resolution to start writing again. But by that stage, like years and years and years of Irish history and Irish mythology reading was just in my head. So once I started to write, that's just what came out. And then once I decided to write The Children of Gods and Fighting Men, I then went back and did more research, because I wanted to really delve into the truth of it, and not kind of a brief overview. I wanted, like, who are the characters? What were their motivations? I want to read the source documents, not just the historians talking about the documents. Yeah. And so then, of course, I did know of Gormla, but she became a much more prominent character once I read the source documents. And once I found her, I kind of knew I had a story that I wanted to tell.
So
Ashley and I love Gormla.
The first character that you discovered that you knew you wanted to write about in the story?
Yeah, because anytime, well, I had very briefly thought about writing for maybe like Brian Boru or Merca or the Kings, and it when I started to do that, it just felt very The Last Kingdom, you know, where you're kind of writing from the viewpoint of a warrior or a king. And like, I mean, really quickly, I just knew I wasn't interested in that. And so, yeah, so when I found Gormla, I was like, and she's all over these historical documents, and she's very unpopular in all the documents that there are. Like, she's a seductress, she's a manipulator, she's a warmonger. And I was like, no, she's too good a character to pass up. Like, I have got to use this character as one of my main POVs.
Thank God you did.
Yeah. Abby and I love what we would describe as difficult women in just novels in general. It's something that we've been talking a lot about recently. I'm so glad that you chose to write from her. I think also something with warriors is it's a story like the male warrior. It's been told so many times, whereas the Gaels have just felt so fresh. And though you include female POVs as your main POVs, I don't think it ever neglects the male perspective either, which is something that I find really impressive about this series. But I feel that although I don't mean this in a negative way, that you were very connected to your female POVs.
Yes, I do think so, and I think like with a character like Gormla, and now to be fair, she does get worse as the series goes on. But in book one, you know, she goes through so many hardships herself, and I think a lot of the judgment on her character, especially in the historical sources, like she's a warmonger, she's manipulative. I mean, so are all the male characters, but that would never be a charge put at them because they would be ambitious and they would be ruthless and they would be, well, of course, they would want to go to war and better their kingdom's like status or whatever. And so I kind of really felt aggrieved on her behalf that she'd had this sort of very like negative press, shall we say. But also, you know, we are not angels, like none of us are. And obviously Fola is a much more sympathetic character because she kind of very much leads with her heart and wants the world to be better for everyone. But that's not how everyone is either. Probably more people have a bit more Gormla in them maybe than Fola. You know, maybe people wouldn't want to admit that, but we do try to do our best for our family. Even, you know, people are willing to push other people down to rise to the top. It's a very human thing to do, even if it's wrong. And it's very, like, as I say, it's a human quality, even if it's not a nice quality. So even when Gormla's doing terrible things, I can still understand them. You know, it's not like malicious or reckless. It's always for a reason, like in her head, like she feels justified in acting that way.
And that's one of the things that Ash and I loved so much, was that you showed that like full women can be all of it. They get to be the villain and the hero in this series, and it's so refreshing to like this series really feels like, you know, classic fantasy, but in a way that centers women that we'd never really read before, and that was so refreshing. And not in a like condescending way either, like when they're the angel, as you say, going out and saving the day. It's they get to be the villains as well, and they're just such great characters, Shauna. They're so good.
Thanks. I know sometimes actually I get a lot of like messages, and sometimes people really hate on Gormla, and I do understand that. Sometimes people really are quite mean about Fola as well, because they see her as weak, or they kind of, I suppose some people read it and don't glean that she's kind of been abused for quite a long time. You know, and that whenever you've been treated that way, it's very hard to be brave. Like you are constrained and you've kind of been brainwashed for a long time. But again, like these are all issues that women deal with, and it's probably good. Like when people say those things, I'm like, I kind of almost feel it's good that you're reading Fola and feeling that way. And maybe, you know, if I reply or somebody else replies, it's kind of like, oh, you know, I wouldn't have thought about that. I wouldn't have thought that people like who've maybe had a very difficult time are going to kind of act in a way that you wouldn't expect, that they're going to be protective of themselves and their family. So it's interesting. I find it always interesting that people really are Team Gormla or Team Fola, you know, and they have such like differing views on the two women. I love that.
It's quite strange because I don't know, Abby, how your experience was, because one of our questions when we discussed this series together was, you know, who do you resonate with more? You know, do you enjoy reading more? And we both really struggled to answer it because they're both so compelling for so many different reasons. But something we really appreciated was actually how much of a mirror of each other they are in so many ways, and how purely just from their circumstances they have to act in different ways. They're both born with, well, have pain everywhere, all around them, and it manifests in them in different ways. I find them both just compelling, and I actually did feel sympathy towards Gormla. Did you, Abby? Did you feel sympathy towards Gormla?
Heck of a lot at the start, less so towards the end, because she does start to make some questionable choices. But at the start, God, yeah, I mean, she really reminds me of, I can't remember her name now, but there's I think, is it Henry the Fourth or Henry the Fifth, the one that kind of unites the two houses and Wars of the Roses. His mother was like married off at like 13 and had him at 13, and it was this like horrendously traumatic situation. And reading Gormley really reminded me of her. I'm so annoyed I can't remember her name.
It's Henry VII's mother.
Henry VII's mother,
yeah. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, she was married off at 13 and she only had Henry. That was her only son, and sort of everything she did afterwards was kind of to place him on the throne. And obviously she was successful. She got him there.
She made some really questionable decisions as well, but again, like Gormley just really, you get she's making those decisions even if you don't agree with them. I had so much sympathy for her. Yeah.
I'm really sorry to ask another question so quickly. There just one thing I wanted to ask, Shauna, was I've heard you speaking in an interview before about how you considered actually making Gormley a bit more sympathetic than you did, because, you know, with all the retellings, mythological retellings, and sort of centering women, and actually you chose to stick with her, you know, roots of being a little bit conniving and everything. What I wanted to ask was, how did Fola come into the picture? Was she quite early on, or is she maybe a bit of an extension of the Gormley that you had previously thought about writing but chose not to? I just wanted to know how Fola came into the picture.
So Gormley, so originally I thought I'm going to make her more sympathetic, and kind of in the way that Anne Boleyn is maybe now thought of more sympathetically than she would have used to have been. You know, because certainly when I was taught Tudor history at school, she was sort of this seductress who, you know, captured Henry's heart, and Catherine of Aragon was ousted, and she was sort of a, you know, she caused this like divorce and all of this. But now whenever I'm reading books about her, we're getting more of, well, she was a very young woman, her family thrust her in the path of Henry VIII to be his mistress, you know, and you kind of can feel a lot more sympathy for her now whenever you frame it through that lens. So I thought about doing the same thing with Gormley, but the only thing was, like, going back to what the negative things about her was that she was a seductress. She was engaged to multiple men at the same time. She was a warmonger, and all of these things. I kind of felt like, well, no, these are not negative qualities for the men. So that's how I'm going to kind of work it, is that she is doing really the same things as all the male characters. It's just because she's a woman that she's being thought of negatively. And then that's an interesting question to ask your reader. You know, Sihtric does terrible things. Brian Boru does bad things, in terms of, like, they are creating war within Ireland. You know, is what Gormley is what she's doing, is it worse or is it not worse? You know, and so that I kind of thought that was more interesting in just making her a nicer person. So because of that, I knew Fola had to kind of be the opposite, like the yin to the yang. And so Fola, I really wanted to be like a much more gentle person. And again, it was when I went to approach them, it was actually through the lens of motherhood that I centered them, because I felt that Gormley was a character that would, you know, wants her son to get ahead no matter what. Anyone else can die, anyone else can suffer, anyone else can be in pain if Sihtric gets a step ahead. Whereas with Fola, with her attitude to motherhood, it is, Ireland is no good if there are lots of people suffering. It needs to be a place where no one is suffering. And she wants everyone to have a better lot in life. And I think, again, they're the kind of feelings that you have when you're a mother. Sometimes you kind of feel like, oh, I want my child to get ahead. But then other times you think, well, you know, if the system's broken, you know, that's no good, you know, because it, you know, the system needs to be good for everyone. Like, all children need to get ahead. All children need to have access to education, healthcare, love, all of these things. And so they just had these two completely different attitudes as to kind of, I guess, what makes a good mother. And because I was a young mother when I was writing it, that I find that interesting, I suppose.
Oh, that's incredible. And I think it really comes through in your writing. Motherhood is, I think, one of the strongest themes that comes through. And both Abby and I, talking from the perspective of not being mothers, we both still found it so incredibly profound and really powerful to look at it from both points of view. It's something that we discuss a lot anyway, so it was something that we were to discuss more through reading your book and your series, and I think that really came through. And I'm guessing, like as you say, reading it, being a young mother yourself at the time, writing it, being a young mother yourself at the time, that must have been a lot of that true emotion was really coming through, and things that probably you would have been reckoning with. So yeah, I think that really comes through.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you. It was sometimes when you're writing like things that are in your head, it kind of just comes out. And there's, like with a lot of my writing, I don't think about it a lot before I start just to type, and stuff comes like out of my brain into my fingers and onto the page. And so afterwards, when I read it, I can go, oh, like it's so obvious that that's where my head was when I was writing the story. But yeah, but then also I would say, like, being that mother figure, lots of people have that role, like in their families, even if they're not the mother. I have a lot of men who kind of email me, and they really feel the theme of, they see it as parenthood, it's the same thing, or aunts or uncles or big sisters, big brothers, kind of that, or even for themselves, like I think we're a lot more politically aware now about, like, what do we want for society, like how do we want it to be? Do we want it to be this kind of like dog eat dog society, or do we want to live in a society that is a bit more forgiving and a bit more generous to everyone? And so all those questions are in the book as well, I think. Definitely.
I'm really interested then, Shauna, because what you've just said there around like not knowing what you're going to write before you write it, while we were reading, like we felt this was so immaculately like paced, and you had such a vision. How much of that vision did you actually have when you were writing book one? Because like there's so much foreshadowing to me when I'm reading it, like where we end up.
Yeah, so I suppose I know the timeline, right? So I know exactly all the historical elements, like how characters are going to interact. Book one, interestingly, has this battle called the Battle of Glenmama. Book 3 has the Battle of Clontarf. And if you were to speak to anyone in Ireland who kind of had a bit of Irish history knowledge, they would all know Clontarf. Clontarf is quite a famous battle. I don't think maybe more than 10% would know the first Battle of Glenmama, but all the same people are at the battle. And so again, whenever I started to write, I was like, oh, I'm going to center around Clontarf. But once I got into it, I was like, I can't start there. There's all these things happening about 30 years beforehand that are very like critical for you to know as a reader, like, how this battle has come to fruition. So because I knew the history so well and I had that timeline, that kind of guided me. So I do know that, but it's just in terms of like the things the characters will say or think, that just happens. I can't explain how. That's just my writing process, I guess. I know kind of the thing that's happening around them, so now I have to kind of give them thoughts and actions and how would they react to this situation, and that's just made up as I type.
That's beautiful. I love that.
That's amazing. And Abby's right. This is something that we spoke about so much. It's just we felt that your writing is just so impeccably paced, as Abby said. But I said to Abby, there's just not a page that is wasted. But it's so page-turny, but it also allowed for so many moments to sort of really sit with the characters and their thoughts as well. And the way you balance being able to do both of those things, I just found that impeccable. So I know you've been writing for years, but the fact that this was a debut series to us, we just found astonishing. So it's
Yep. Well, I would say to anyone who's like watching, like I was writing for a long time before this. This is just the first novel that kind of got picked up. I had written a novel before this. But yes, I mean, and I also am going to say this because, you know, AI writing is becoming such a talking point and people are using it. And the AI cannot teach you that. See, pacing and plotting and characterization and weaving. Like you have got to practice writing to learn those things and to learn when to plant a seed and when the kind of resolution happens and all of that. And so if anyone is listening to this, he is a writer and has been contemplating using AI, that is just a message for me to say, do not. It is a shortcut that will really, in the end, lead you nowhere. Writing is something that just takes practice. You can't really cheat the practice part.
No. I think also something that I found really beautiful that I heard you speaking about previously in another discussion is how your gran wrote lots of stories.
Yes, I know. I'm so lucky I have them, and my dad had kept them all.
Oh, that's amazing.
Because she loved Irish mythology and Irish folklore, and so all her stories are about that. So that's kind of originally what got me into Irish mythology and folklore, is that she had all these stories based on it, and I had read all of them. And then when I was about 13, 14, I was in a bookstore, and there's a very famous book by Lady Gregory. And so my book is The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. Her book is Of Gods and Fighting Men. And it's all the original Irish mythologies. And so I saw it in the bookstore and I was like, oh, this is all the stuff my granny used to write about and talk about. And so I bought this massive book with all the original Irish mythology stories and read it. So my granny would have been a big influence on me.
That's amazing.
I love that. I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You still have, do you still have them now as well?
Yeah, I still have them. And actually, I actually have a recording because my granny died when I was like 4, but we have a recording of her saying some of the stories as well.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, very special.
That's really special. Abby and I speak sometimes about how reading and experiencing stories can be such a personal experience because you can do it alone, but it can be shared. And also in this case, it can be generational as well. You know, they're just passing down. I just think that's so beautiful, and how proud she would be of you. You know.
Oh yeah, she would love it because she, like, if she was alive now, she would be getting published. You know, she was obviously living in a time like she grew up in Belfast and wouldn't have had a lot of money and all that sort of things. But she was like, when I read her stuff, I'm like, she's so talented. You know. So talented, and now she would have had more opportunities that probably back whenever she was growing up just wouldn't have existed. So I kind of feel very proud that I've been published and I'm able to talk about her stories being an influence.
That's so beautiful. I'm going to tear up in a minute.
Really beautiful.
Oh.
Carry that torch for her.
Yeah, I did see. I remember when you were talking about you talked about the different mythological cycles in Irish mythology.
Yes.
Am I right? It's the mythological cycle that you've mainly based this series on. Is that right?
Yes, which is the first cycle. It's the original cycle, and then there's 3 cycles after that. So the cycle after the mythological cycle is the Ulster cycle, which is about a character called Cuchulainn. And the cycle after that is the Fenian cycle, which is about Finn McCool. And then there's a cycle after that, which is called the historical cycle, and is kind of a collection of stories about various kings, ancient kings that lived in Ireland, but it's not kind of connected by just one character in the same way that the other cycles are.
That's cool. And do you have any elements from those other cycles that are kind of in your stories at all, or are they very separate? Are they like really different vibes?
There is elements, definitely, because the mythological cycle is all the Tuatha Dé Danann and the Fomorians and their battles. And then at the end of that cycle, they're defeated by another tribe called the Milesians, who are kind of like the mortals of Ireland. And they banish the Tuatha Dé Danann underground. But some of the characters in these other cycles, like Cuchulainn and Finn McCool, are related to the Tuatha Dé Danann, like their father or grandfather is them. And so whenever I was reading them, and they're obviously these famous warriors. I to myself was like, oh, they are descendants.
Yeah.
They have inherited some of these like gifts or qualities from their ancestors, and that's why they are these famous warriors. So that's kind of another thing that planted the seed of having these kind of mythological type characters living in Ireland after the original Tuatha Dé Danann had been banished underground, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah,
I really need to learn. I need to read more around this because, yeah, it's so fascinating.
It really is very fascinating. And obviously, like, we've got the Odyssey coming out, and I know Greek mythology is gonna like have an absolute boom because the Greek mythology is amazing. But I just would say Irish mythology is equally as amazing, and it doesn't get the same focus. But yeah, like, there's so many stories that you can read, and there's like beautiful like children's illustrated books as well. And I'm like, if you ever wanted to start somewhere, just because the books are so beautiful to look at, like, I would even just start there, and you get like these beautiful pictures and kind of the main stories of all the gods and goddesses. And like, I love all the kids books. I bought them all for my kids to read to them.
I might have to go looking for some and gift them. I haven't got kids of my own, but I've got nieces and nephews, and one of them's such a reader, and I'm determined to, like, she's going to be into mythology. So,
oh no, it just even like my I've got some. My husband's cousin bought some, and the one he bought, I was like, oh my god, this is like a work of art. Like the artwork in it was phenomenal. Like I hadn't seen it before, and I was like, I want to buy that for myself. Even though it's a story for kids, just because the artwork was so beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm a big advocate for being an adult having children's books still, because some part of me just thinks that in some ways they, like you say with the illustrations, they're just made so much better. And like, no, I'm a big advocate for still having them.
Oh, like,
on list, Shauna.
Honestly, absolutely. Like, you know, my kids, you know, they're kind of getting older now, but they still all love like Roald Dahl and, you know, that which I loved when I was a kid. So kids books are great. I think obviously, like, it's marketing, isn't it, and like where the bookshelves are and who should be there. But like, god, like, kids books are great. Like, I actually think it's very hard to be an author for children's books. You have to balance so many things, and the pacing has to be on fire to keep children interested. You know, you do not get the grace that you do as an adult author.
I've never considered that before. It's quite a responsibility as well, actually, isn't it? To kind of, with such a young mind. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I think it would be very hard. Like, I have a lot of respect for anyone who is a successful children's author. You know, I don't think I have that in me. I'm too long-winded, I think. I think your mind has to be very succinct, and you need to be like proper on point with timing and plotting and pacing and keeping everything going really quickly.
I mean, I would say you do that very, very well, Shauna, but I I take your point.
Well, you say that, but then this is funny. So my books are meant to be about 120,000 words. So book one that's roughly what book one is, and then book two was 135,000, and so that was kind of okay. And then book three was 175,000 words. And I was actually scared to hand it into my publisher in case they were like, you need to cut like 30,000 words, 40,000 words to kind of comply with your contract, but they never said anything.
The pacing of them is just phenomenal. And actually, now you've said that, something I wanted to ask is, you've spoken a bit about your writing process, but did the books get easier to write, or did it get more difficult to kind of close off the sort of end of era one?
Yes and no. I think by the time you've got to book three, you know what you've got to hit and what you've got to do. So you're not thinking there or sitting there thinking, oh, like, how is so and so going to get there, and you know, what are they going to think about this? Like, that's gone, because everything's very set in stone and you're kind of on the downward slope. But that is hard sometimes to do as well. You know, like hit the landing is difficult. I think it's something a lot of authors struggle with, because often you have the ending in your head from book one, but your characters can change through book one and through book two, or 3 or 4, however long your series is, and then sometimes you get to the ending and sometimes the ending doesn't work anymore because the characters are not quite who you envisioned them to be at the start. So that can be difficult because then you're a lot more tethered. You don't have so much room to play. You have to kind of try to find a way to make the ending fit with the characters that you now have. So there can be issues like that, which can be difficult. But in saying that, I really loved writing The Land of the Living and the Dead. Clontarf had loomed so large in my head for so long that whenever I got to write those scenes, I mean, I really enjoyed it, getting it all on the page. So there's difficulties about a trilogy that you don't have with a standalone, that sometimes you don't appreciate until you get there. But overall, like, I really enjoyed writing a trilogy and having the room to breathe, and to kind of do things like plant seeds in book one and book two, and then getting to show the audience or the reader like what's going to happen and how that's all going to play out.
I think that was done so well. I really loved how it ended, but I read the first trilogy or era one knowing that there was going to be an era two, but but that really excited me because I was so happy that there was going to be more in this world. But I think you did it so well that you could leave it there. Also, I think the way you managed both of those was fantastically done, and the seeds were planted so well. So I really love that. I love that it was sort of semi-open ended. I think that's really nice.
Yes, but that's life, because it's historical fantasy, that is the way it should be. Like, no history ever just has a definitive end and then it's all happily ever after. Things like a series of events continue to impact the next series of events. So for me, having it a bit open-ended was right, I think.
I completely agree. I love an ending like that in any genre, but especially, like you say, historical fiction. It makes everything feel much more believable and real. Yeah. I have a question about the novellas, if that's okay, because I have a very strong opinion about the fact people shouldn't skip the novellas. First of all, they are necessary reading, but also what order that you would recommend people read them in, because to me it kind of feels like it makes sense in a certain order, but I've had people disagree with me on this, so I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Right. So I had ideas when I wrote the novellas that Dreams of Fire would be a prequel novella for the people who were more fantasy readers who wanted to give my series a go. And then my thoughts were that Dreams of oh my god, there's Dreams of Fire, Dreams of Sorrow, and Dreams of Chaos. So Dreams of Chaos would be the one that historical fiction readers would gravitate to. And so novellas for me were a bit of an experiment. It's kind of saying to someone, like, I get a book is a big investment of time, but here's 20,000 words if you just to give the series, my writing, a go. So that was my original thoughts, and then Dreams of Sorrow in the middle was like a reward for readers, because that one definitely should be read after the Words of Kings and Prophets. But now more people are getting into the series and they're like, I want to just read it. I don't want like an introduction. I would prefer to have a proper reading order. I would probably say The Children of Gods and Fighting Men, followed by Dreams of Fire. And then I would say The Words of Kings and Prophets, followed by Dreams of Sorrow. And then I would say The Land of the Living and the Dead, followed by Dreams of Chaos.
You have validated my opinions. Thank you so much.
That's how we read it.
Yeah, that's how we read it. And I just can't imagine reading it any other way. It's so satisfying. Did the novellas come about separately to the series then? Because you've kind of talked about your contract was for 3 books. Did they just kind of spring into being, or did you kind of plan that in the first place? So
me and Ryan Cahill were at FantasyCon in London, and the Queen had just died. And
sorry, that's the best opening to an answer to a question.
Yeah, so I don't know what was going on, but like there was like police everywhere in this hotel. And so me and Ryan were kind of like, what is going on? And our hotel was chaos because people had booked to stay and then the hotel had overbooked, or the police had to stay there or something. And so there was no rooms for everyone. And so me and Ryan kind of were like, you know, like just watch, like what is going on in this hotel? And there's so many police, like we didn't kind of really know what was going on. And so we ended up talking about novellas, was kind of the conversation we were having. And he had written The Fall, which obviously is like, it's a fantastic novella. And so I was like, oh, like I should write a novella. Like that's like a really good idea. And he was like, you know, again, he was sort of saying it's a shorter work that you can give someone to have a go at your series, and it's shorter and it's kind of showing what you can do. So, but I did not realize that most publishers do not let authors write novellas. It's like not a big thing, really. Big authors get to write novellas, and I know Christopher Rocchio has talked about this. When he approached his publisher about writing a novella, they were not interested. And I think they said something like Patrick Rothfuss can write a novella, but that's kind of it. I'm kind of paraphrasing Christopher Rocchio there, but I did hear him say that on a podcast. So I was kind of very lucky. I kind of pitched this like trilogy of novellas to my publisher, and they were like, yeah, like that sounds amazing, like let's do it. So again, it was kind of a bit of naivety, but also having a great publisher that's been very generous and kind of let me like have ideas and then has sort of run with them. So we signed a trilogy of novellas in and around me writing the original trilogy. And every so often I would just give them one and then they would publish it.
I love that. That's so interesting about to me, like some of my favorite series have got novellas and they really like level it up. As a reader, I love to see a novella with a series. It makes me so excited to get into a series when there's like other little snacks in between. So I can't really understand that.
Yeah, I think they're getting more into it now, definitely. Like I'm seeing more series with companion novellas, and I'm seeing novellas in bookstores. But I do think like maybe 6-7 years ago, like not so much. But like publishing is changing, I think, very rapidly. I think publishers are more willing to kind of play around with format and stuff, because with my novellas, you know, they're ebooks and audiobooks at the minute, although we hopefully are going to get a physical edition. You know, that's easy for a publisher to do. You know, why not have a go at doing these things and see if you can get an audience for one of your authors. So I do think publishers are more willing now, and I think Christopher found that. He must have found that when he had written his first book, Empire of Silence, and I don't know how long ago that came out, but that must have come out about maybe 7-8 years ago. And that was kind of the reaction he said he got, that they just weren't interested in novellas.
There's quite a few novellas for that series, though, aren't there? You're reading that series at the moment, aren't you?
I think he self-published them. Like they're his novellas. His publisher has not published them.
Yes, that's right. Because I believe now that Sunita series has really picked up, I think he is now able to publish all of the novellas in one big volume physically. But initially it wasn't a consideration.
That's correct, because that's the next book coming out. No, I mean, honestly, like it's you know, even since I've been here, and I got published in 2022, one. Oh my gosh, when did I first get published? Was it 2021? Yeah, 2021. It's changed a lot. So that's like 4 or 5 years. So I think if you go back to 10 years, when like maybe ebooks were just starting to kind of get big, and audiobooks, like the industry is probably completely unrecognizable, and like the things publishers want to do or willing to do is just very different.
Behind the scenes gossip there. That's so interesting. Yeah.
Well, I haven't said anything out of turn. I hope I definitely heard them say that at like either a live like event where other people were at, or on a podcast somewhere.
So I love the Gael Song novellas because, I mean, the good thing about novellas in general is it allows you to spend some time with some characters that maybe you don't get to spend so much time with, or you can at least see their backstory a little bit without it having to be all included and maybe change the pace of one of your main books. So no, I think they're a fantastic idea. Dreams of Sorrow was the standout one for me. That was the one that really just changed my life. I think Abby and I might agree with on that one because of the character that it includes.
Yeah. I know, because I couldn't have put that story in anywhere else. It had to be a novella for that character. And I think that character deserved that story to be told. And it also gave you, through her lens, you got to see a couple of other characters that are in the main series. And I guess probably confirmed your feelings about those characters, but just, kind of maybe amped up those feelings a little bit before the third book.
Yeah. I'm not going to name the characters because that'll be a bit of a spoiler, but you've got a villain in this series who is so like bone chilling. Like, I feel like most women know somebody that's kind of like this in real life, and it's so like infuriating to read on the page this person. How was it to write somebody like that? Because I feel like it's got to be quite challenging to get into the head of somebody like that, especially as a woman.
Yeah, I think unfortunately though, like, we know people like that. It is a male character, and I suppose, I think sometimes, when we talk about the patriarchy, sometimes there's kind of very obvious villains. Is I didn't like an Andrew Tate kind of figure, like where it's kind of, you don't even need to watch them for long to just know what they're all about and know that what they're saying is horrible. But I think often, not for me, the worst sort of misogynist person like that is the kind of the person that does it with a smile and is capable of saying the right things that you want to hear, but it's just all lies. I think, and that's, like if I've had friends who've had kind of like difficult relationships and things like that. And when you talk to them about their partner's behavior, it doesn't start off terrible. It becomes terrible. And the scarier thing is that they don't think there's anything wrong with their behavior, and they've justified it. And in fact, they think that they are good for the other person, and it's a difficult mindset to get into, but unfortunately there's so many examples of it that I didn't really struggle to write that character.
Yeah, that's fair. I completely agree. And I think Ash and I both said at the time, like, we've known people who are maybe not such an extreme example as this, but are exactly like this in real life. And I think that helps to make this series feel so relevant and so modern at the same time as being so historical. Your themes and the kind of topics that you tackle are so important and so relevant to now. It's just so great.
Yeah, and I think the series literally is 1,000 years ago, just over, and it's scary. I think kind of when you think about how people acted and what they did, we're so similar. It's the same issues, just on a cycle and on a loop. And then also I just think the experience of being a woman in society, and the issues and the pitfalls, and they're the same. And I also think that's the same for the men. I think this kind of patriarchy often is very damaging for men too. Mm-hmm. You can see that with some of the male characters like Brocken especially, and Mirka, that they are kind of caught in the same trap. And they have to find a way to live and to get out of it and to be true to themselves. And I think men have that issue today too. It's yeah,
absolutely. I agree. I think Mirka was a bit of a favourite for Abby and I. We both felt very much that I think all of your characters are extremely human, but even though some of them obviously are more mythological and have their abilities, that Mirka, though being a mortal, a human, he felt very human in terms of, I think I felt the struggle of his powerlessness throughout the series quite a lot, and how hard to work with that given his position as well.
Yeah, Mirka he's definitely just, I think sometimes we have this conversation, you know, where we talk about like the negative aspects of manhood or men, and then we're like, well, where are the positive examples that we can kind of point to? And so when I created Mirka, because I know lots of lovely men, but you know, I've kind of talked about like some of the not so nice men I've met in my life, but in terms of family and friends, I have lots of like lovely male friends. My husband is wonderful. My like children, my sons, I think they're wonderful. My nephews, they're wonderful. And my brother, like everyone. And so I really wanted to have a male character that I could kind of say, like, this is like, I do know this man, like I know people like him, and all these wonderful qualities that he has are there. And that's kind of what we want men to be, and men can be, and men are. And I don't think that is pedestaled enough or highlighted enough.
Completely agree. He really reminded me of like a Jane Austen kind of hero in a lot of ways.
Like he's doing the right thing for the right reason.
Not for the reward, just because it's right.
Yes, and I think that's, you know, I think that's what we want. I do, like, I kind of remember, like, just thinking about it, I was listening to an interview of Taylor Swift, and I think she was sort of saying that when she was coming up, the qualities that they wanted in a female pop star were not her. And I think the interviewer goes, well, what do you mean? And she goes, oh, well, you know, you want a pop star to be cool and sexy, and I wasn't that. I was creative and I was thoughtful, and she kind of went through other attributes. And for me, it was very interesting. But for me as well, I was like, yes, I think in fiction, sometimes the qualities given to male heroes actually in real life aren't the qualities that we would want them to have. I think kind of like being loving, doing the right thing, being compassionate and kind. These are the qualities I actually want, like more than I want like hot and sexy and, you know, badass, or, you know, which kind of is kind of the male prototype that we quite often get. And so for Mirka, I wanted him to embody all those positive attributes that in real life I want.
I really get that from this. He was so cool.
Debbie and I spoke about this before, saying that one thing we felt we absolutely thought about this series, and even though it's not at the forefront as such, was that you brought back yearning. Just something that we don't see so much. You know, it's often enemies to lovers, or, you know, these sorts of things that it falls into, but it wasn't. It felt like real yearning in this series, and everything how you wrote Mirka, I think, really translates on the page. He's one of Abby and Anna's favourite characters. We love him for that reason. So I think you absolutely nailed it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was important to me that he was the right character, because there's other male characters like the Citric and Olaf who kind of are maybe more stereotypical, is that they could have been the hero in another version of the series, but no, I wanted a character like Mirka to be the hero. And yes, and I that's the other thing. I was reading some reviews, which you should not do, of book one, and it was kind of like, oh, this relationship is like so slow, like I know where it's going, and like yawn, it's the end of book one and they're not together yet. And I was just like, but you can't have like this slow burn yearning romance if they get together in chapter 2. Like, you actually have to wait for it.
It just shows, doesn't it, how like it's different things for different readers, because for me, and my friend calls it a breadcrumbs romance, and that's what you've given us here, and that's what I want. Like, it's I want to be just like nibbling up the crumbs as I go. Like, it carries you through the whole series that way, whereas I think you burn out on it if it's too early. But I mean, that's just me. as a
No,
reader. I
that is
appreciate
me.
that. But
And that is why you should always write a book that you would want to read, and you shouldn't change it. Like I don't like stories where people get together in chapter 2. I find that really boring. I like it when there's a bit of like yearning, as you say, or there's like problems and things that keep you apart, but you want to get together. I love all that drama. So, yeah.
well, thank you for writing it this way, because it's exactly what we wanted. So,
Well, thank you.
Written for me and Abby, that's how we feel.
Yeah. So Marka was lovely. And actually, whenever I got to the second series, my husband was like, what are you going to do? You don't because it's obviously 150 years later, so I'm not going to give any spoilers. It's like a different era. But he was like, what are you going to do? Like, without some of these like pivotal characters, like, what are they going to be like? And like, we can't just have like Merca 2 and Fola 2. We need to have distinct new characters. And I think he was like, I think that's going to be a problem, because some people are going to be so attached to the original era that they're going to find it hard to move forward with new characters. So that was kind of a problem I did think about, just because like everyone loves Fola and Merca so much.
I feel like you did because I was a little worried about that. I'll be honest, when I was picking it up, because I was so attached to the characters from the first era. But you do such a great job of like holding the hand of the reader through that kind of transition and handing it over into a new set of characters. And I'm like, I've got the arc of Son of the Serpent on my Kindle. I've just reread Daughter of the Other World, and I'm so gripped and so excited about this new set of characters now. So you smashed it. You absolutely smashed it.
I'm very excited for people to read Son of the Serpent. It's very dark, like in places, and so there's a few twists as well. So
Ashley's read it, and when she finished it, she was like, Abby, we need to talk. Read the book.
All right, yeah. There's a few things that happen, right? But as probably hopefully you were not expecting.
Oh my gosh, no, there's so many twists in this one. I have been really trying to keep my cool whilst I've been waiting for Abby to read it, because
it's my next read, I promise.
But this is the best scenario for me, because I've read it, so I don't have to worry. So now I can just get constant updates of everything that happens, and it's going to be me. I get to relive it through this. But no, Son of the Serpent was amazing. I know it's not even out yet, but this is one of the sort of, I guess, the best curse to have with getting an early an arc is that you then have a little bit longer to wait for the next one. But honestly, I can only echo what Abby said, that especially in like Daughter of the Other World, you really held our hand as a reader coming into it. It didn't feel jarring at all. Making that time jump. The characters sort of, even though we are introduced to new characters, it felt so seamless. And obviously it's echoes from the same story, isn't it? It's all from the same sort of thread of history and information. So it worked really well, and I just thought it was beautiful. I'm so excited for Era 2. I think I'm excited for you as well, that you're doing the Era 2. I just think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. It's a story I always envisaged, so I would have been disappointed if Head of States had said no, which they could have done, but so I'm getting to finish it like with a bang, like exactly how I saw it in my head, like maybe 8 years ago now. So I'm really looking forward to getting the whole series, like, even though they're two eras, like there is links between them. So I'm looking forward to getting that finished and out there.
I don't know. I mean, you can absolutely not answer this question if you can't answer it. But is there any chance of any other novellas possibly in the future? I mean, I would not want to say, put any pressure on you. You're already doing so much incredible writing. But do you ever plan to write any more in this world, or is it after sort of Era 2 is rounded off that will be your sort of closing that door for a little while?
Well, so I am writing a novella on my Patreon at the minute, which is a Gael Song novella. So it's a chapter a month comes out, and then I'm going to print it next year. But also I am thinking of doing another one, but I'm in talks with my publisher at the minute, so I can't really talk about it because nothing's like signed or agreed yet. But I think there definitely will be more novellas. And like I wouldn't even rule out, I'm not going to do a sequel series, but I could potentially do a prequel series. Just depending on kind of if I find a story or an era I like, which I think I have found actually. And I'll have to think on about that. But at the minute, I'm very focused on just finishing book 6. I'm only about 20,000 words into it at the minute. So like maybe about 25,000. So it still feels like quite early. I haven't quite kind of got that story finished. I think once I've done that, then I'll be able to think about something else.
Amazing. Well, that's excellent news to us. But no, I would never want that question to seem like it was, pressure, because I think that's we're in a world, aren't we, where everyone's so focused on the next thing, whereas actually it's just so wonderful to be able to be in this moment where you're working on era 2, and we've got so many, like the fact you've been able to do the other novellas. There's so much in this world. It's so rich. It's just it's wonderful to be able to have as much as we do. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, and the novellas have really been fantastic as well as a way to explore the world myself and the characters myself. So no, I'm not quite ready to give up on Gael Song yet. I think it's been such a part of my life for so long. Like literally, I was kind of not writing the Gael Song when I turned 30, but I was writing around it and kind of writing themes that maybe kind of came up. So I feel like this has been what I've been thinking and writing about maybe for about 12 years now. So I don't think I'll ever say goodbye. I think I'll always think of like little extra stories that I could write about.
That's music to our ears.
Oh, thank you.
I'll read whatever you write, however long it takes. I'll be sat waiting. So.
Anything you write, we are reading. Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much. No, well, that's lovely, and it is nice to know that, like, as I said, like when the book came out, again, very naively, I just didn't really know how my book would do. Like I didn't expect it to be a bestseller because it wasn't prompted to kind of be that. But it's you just don't know how it's going to take off, or is it going to take off, or is it going to die? Are people not going to be interested? So it's just been really lovely to see the series grow and build, and people reaching out to tell me how much the stories mean, and that more and more people are reading it every year. It's growing rather than kind of contracting, I suppose. So it's nice because it's not like a vanity for me. It's more like I want people to read the characters. I want people to know Fola and Merca and Gormla, and so it's nice when they do.
So deserved. Abby, do you have anything that you would wish to ask Shauna? So I'm just looking at the time, very conscious of.
No, I don't think so. It's been so lovely to chat with you though, Shauna. Thank you so much.
Yes, I know, it's so warm. I was like, I'm sure you just want to go somewhere where there's a fan and just stand in front of it for a few minutes.
I mean, I think Abby already has a fan on her. I'm so jealous.
Got a little desk fan on me, yeah. But
yeah.
No, it's been so lovely to chat with you.
Oh, well, thank you again for inviting me on to speak. It's lovely. It's lovely to see that people are loving the Gael Song and want to talk about it and enjoy reading it and all of that. I think that's wonderful.
We absolutely adore it, and we recommend it to everybody that we talk to. At work, actually, the other day, I was recommending it to a customer at work, and I was sort of saying, "Oh, you should try this series; it'll be amazing." So we try and spread the word as much as possible because we think it's incredible. And I hope I'm not opening up a can of worms here, but I also just wanted to quickly, because I didn't want to leave without saying it, but also just want to congratulate you because of the television rights for this as well.
Yeah.
Being picked up. So I just wanted to congratulate you. I won't ask any more questions or open up a can of worms with that one, but I
know I was about to say I'm not allowed to say anything. But yeah, I mean, again, like, oh my God, like TV series get bought all the time for books. Very few of them get made, but like I would love it so much. Like I would be in the front row myself to watch it. Like I think it would be amazing if it did happen. but I can't say anything about it, unfortunately.
We completely understand that. I just wanted to congratulate you because it's something that, I mean, if it ever did get made into it, oh my gosh, Abby and I, Abby lives a very long way away from me, but I think we would have to drive and go and meet up and have a little watch party, because it would just be incredible.
Yeah, well, fingers, like, it's not completely impossible, so keep your fingers crossed, and maybe it will happen. I mean, it's happened for other series, and there's no reason why it couldn't happen, I guess.
Exactly. Well, again, thank you so much, Shauna, for joining us this evening and just chatting to us. This is a little bit of a dream come true for Abby and I. As I say, we kind of were talking about getting the opportunity to chat with you last year, and the fact that we're actually here tonight doing this has been wonderful. So thank you so much for taking the time. Congratulations on the success of the series, and we can't wait to keep reading and keep exploring the stories and the worlds that you write. So thank you so much for writing them, because we're so grateful.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Again, thank you so much for inviting me to come on.
I will leave everyone there, but also I might have to talk to you, Shauna, about maybe some possible further reading for people that would like to maybe learn a bit more about history or something. So maybe I could ask if you would be able to share with me a list of some things. I think actually there are some in your books, but any of the children's books are ones that I'm actually really interested in sharing with family and things like that. So maybe I can ask for a little list and I can pop it in the description so that people can look for a bit of further information about your books and your story, what led you to write them. But yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I guess we'll see everyone again very soon. So thank you everybody for watching.